So there is quite a few verses in this. We're going to spend quite a bit of this classroom reading. There's about 43 verses, and there's a lot of very difficult names in this particular section. Just a few notes before we get started. One thing I found was interesting is in the notes that Chris provided from Moffat, what the sublines he had is the names should be read. There should be, you need to study it, but it's not something to really spend a lot of in-depth time on. There's not a lot of, I guess, from a standpoint of spiritual gleaning or history in here. Oddly enough, at this point, we're going to be introduced one last time to Esau and his descendants. And other than references back to Esau in chapters where he's already clearly passed, because Israelites are in the land of Israel, they're going into the land of Israel. Jacob's been long since passed, so Esau's got to be in that same realm. We don't hear anything else about Esau while he is actually alive at this point. So this is the last reference to Esau, more or less, while he is actually living in the land of actually Edom at this time. So kind of interesting that this is the last we get to hear about him. One of the notes that he has in here also is Moses has concluded the history of Isaac. We find out pretty quick that I think it's in 37 that Isaac actually passes, or excuse me, we just discussed it. I've got my dates a little bit off. So we're going to take, and since Isaac had two sons, his statement here is we're going to go with one that from a historical standpoint is less important. Our consideration of Jacob was going to take over the patriarchy when Isaac passed, so Esau is the less important bloodline from that perspective. But we're going to see that despite not having the birthright, despite not having that genealogy and Christ coming through him eventually, God basically rewards him as he does show a devotion because he is Abraham's descendant. So he still sees some success, and he still sees a fairly decent nation out of the process.
Also, Esau in that, Christ came through that lineage?
Christ will come through Jacob, down through Judah, Jacob.
Okay.
So just going back a few chapters before we get into the heavy reading. Chapter 32, Jacob's left what area? So we're just putting Jacob back into Canaan. So where was Jacob in 31 before? I'm sorry? Right, he was with his uncle Laban, working there, for his wives, pretty much all the children that we recorded about except one, where he was born in 36. So we also can find out here that if you read in 32 verse 3, Esau's no longer in the land of Canaan. He's actually already moved down to Edom, down south of even where Israel's border is going to wind up being that northern part of Edom later on. So he's already moved on. He's already moved away from Isaac. He's already down below. We do find out that he has, we're going to find out here shortly, that he has amassed a very successful wealth despite not inheriting that his birthright for being the oldest son. 33, what event happens in 33? Right. Jacob and Esau meet back up. Happy or violent occurrence? Happy. Yeah, Jacob's preparing for the worst, and Esau couldn't be happier to see him. So so 33, Esau invites Jacob back down to live with him in Edom. And what does Jacob do? Yeah, he goes the other direction, which is eventually where God tells him to go that way anyway, but he tells Esau be there shortly, and he winds up taking off another direction. So he's still a little bit concerned about it. We get into 34, the very beginning of 34, the only daughter that we have recorded of Jacob's, she goes out, she gets into some trouble. Unfortunate events happen. And how does Jacob and his sons, well, more of his sons react to that event? Right. And they go in there, the interesting thing is, as you read through 34, it doesn't really ever identify them other than by the leader and the prince. He'll go king and prince, even though they're never given those titles, the chief, however you want to lay it out. But one of my top notes there says the Shechemites. They're not really given a name. I guess they're not that large of a group yet. But Shechem is the one that unfortunately rapes Dinah. And so they wind up killing the whole family. What is Jacob's concern about the event of the slaughter? Yeah, he wasn't so concerned from the way it was read that his sons did this. He was concerned that you're going to bring reproach from the rest of the Canaanites back up on me. God puts the fear of the people around them, is what we read, and so Jacob didn't have anything to worry about there. And then chapter 35, God tells Jacob to return to what location he's already been? To Bethel. On the way to Bethel, what happens with Rachel?
Dies in childbirth.
Yes. So she names Benjamin, who we always know as Benjamin Benoni, which is son of sorrow. Jacob calls him Benjamin, which is son of right hand. So he gives a little bit happier name than what son of sorrow would have probably been. So that sets us up at the very end of 36. We do read where Isaac is passed, and he was about 180 at that time. So we go back to the topic that he passed his birthright on when he was about 100. He was 100. He was getting older. Between that point, we kind of lose some of the ages in there before Jacob goes over to Laban. So he lived about another 80 years at least, somewhere in there, passing his birthright on. So now with that passing, and after inheriting the birthright, inheriting the blessed, we now have Jacob, or who's supposed to be called Israel at this point, as the patriarch of the family line. All right. So, anybody have anything they want to add on the recap before we get into chapter 36? If I can get somebody, please don't make me read it. I'm just kidding. 1 through 8, if we can. I'm going to go with Moffat's breakdowns here. So 1 through 8.
Now these are the generations of Esau, who is Edom. Esau took his wives of the daughters of Canaan. Adah, the daughter of Elon, the Hittite, and the daughter of Anah, the daughter of Zebulun, the Hivite, and Bathsheba, Ishmael's daughter, sister of Nebajah, and Adah bare to Esau, Eliphaz, and Bathsheba bare Reuel. And Aholibamah, bare Jeush, and Jalem, and Korah. These are the sons of Esau, which were born unto him in the land of Canaan. And Esau took his wives, his sons, and his daughters, and all the persons of his house, and his cattle, and all his beasts, and all his substance, which he had got in the land of Canaan, and went into the country from the face of his brother Jacob. For their riches were more than that they might dwell together, and the land wherein they were strangers could not bear them because of their cattle. Thus dwelt Esau in Mount Seir. Esau is Edom.
Thank you. I can't imagine why we don't use some of these names for our own kids. Okay. So, a couple things this is kind of the section that has a little bit more meat in it from a historical standpoint, because we get into a lot more names going for future. So how many wives do we read here? 3. Now I was kind of curious, and I haven't really found the answer to it, but if you go back when, I just had it, back in 28, because we know that Esau got married at 40 to the 2 Canaanites. But in 28, when Esau, starting in 6, we see where, granted it was deception, but Rebecca wants Isaac to go back to Laban for a wife and not marry the daughters of Canaanite. We see where Esau goes to Ishmael and takes wives in verse 9. So I would say that it means he at least took 2 wives from Ishmael, but we only read of one of them here, him having any children or carrying on. So I'm not sure what happened to the other one or if it was just unimportant from that perspective, but Esau did. We do see that Esau definitely had multiple wives in this situation. Oddly enough, from what I can piece together in this, despite the number of people that we're reading in here, he had 1 son with Ada, that's Eliphaz, 3 sons with, I know I'm going to butcher this, Aholibamah, Jaish, Jalem, and Korah, and he had 1 son with Bashemath, which is the actual Ishmaelite rule. So the rest of the individuals that we're going to read through here are that next generation, his grandchildren after that. So Seir, where he lived, yes ma'am.
In 36, I guess in verse 3, it says, Asemoth, or son of Ishmael's daughter. Where in chapter 28, it calls her Mahalath, the daughter.
I did see that the name changed. I don't know if that.
So is that the same person? I guess. Verse 9, I think.
Either it's the same person because they're both listed as sisters of Nebajoth,
Yes.
or he married a pair of sisters. I don't know which, because it just says that he married wives. I don't know if Cody, y'all ever
Okay.
dug into that.
So it could be 3 or 4.
At least 2.
Okay,
I mean, if you're
yeah.
stating wives, I would say at least 2.
Which one had 12 kids?
Ishmael had 12 princes. Jacob had 12 children, and I know we're going to get through at least 9 grandchildren with Esau that I can kind of count through here, and I'm sure I missed somebody. So there was a bunch of them that were spread out through this area. And I've got some notes that we can go through when we get through the reading, but just one thing to mention, well, you can actually find the Mount of Seir through a lot of the Bible. It's a pretty big landmark, even through the Kings and those items. So that mountain was it's a good landmark, a good idea, a good locational identification when people are reading this, especially when they're, Moses is writing this about, they're wandering around the wilderness and that. Well, that mountain's going to be pretty well known at that point. There's no telling how many times they may have come close to it, or they at least passed it twice getting into the land that they were promised to. There's also apparently inhabitants already in Seir. We'll get into that coming up in a few verses. So whoever was there, Esau apparently intermarried into, and that helped out with the size of his group. But it does seem like he was the more powerful individual because they take his name rather than him taking their name. So his lineage keeps popping up throughout the Old Testament. So verses 7 there, or verses 6 and 7, is where you can kind of tell that some of this activity that has happened here happens before Jacob returns. That goes back to the note that we just talked about back in 33 or 32, 33, when Jacob sends messengers to Esau. He sent them to Seir, so Esau had already moved before Jacob came in. So, and it mentions here that the riches were more than they might dwell together. So it appears as if, even with Isaac still alive, his inheritance was still seen as Jacob's. Is the only way I can really take that and run with it. That since he's moved because their wealth was too much, we see that Jacob's wealth stayed with Isaac in Canaan. Esau took everything that he had earned, all his wives, his family, down to another location, which is what we saw with Abraham and Lot. Their possessions were too great, so they had to split up. It kind of keeps that lineage that God has decided going the way he wants it to. Anybody have anything they want to add? So go 9 through 14, please.
And these are the generations of Esau, the father of the Edomites in Mount Seir. These are the names of Esau's son: Eliphaz the son of Ada, the wife of Esau; Reuel the son of Bashemath, the wife of Esau. And the sons of Eliphaz were Timnah, Omar, Zepho, and Gatam, and Kenaz. And Timnah was concubine to Eliphaz, Esau's son, and she bare to Eliphaz Amalek. These were the sons of Ada, Esau's wife. And these are the sons of Reuel, Nahath, and Zerah. Shemamah and Mizah. These were the sons of Bashemath, Esau's wife. And these were the sons of Bama, the daughter of Anah, the daughter of Zibeon, Esau's wife. And she bare to Esau Jeush, and Jael, and Korah.
Thank you. So just some as additional descendants, we do see some repeat here, going from some of the children they mentioned the first time. In this case, in verse 11, we do get it broke down to who his grandchildren were. Kind of an interesting side note, Teman, who is one of his grandchildren there listed in verse 11. Cody, correct me if this is incorrect, but if you read in Job chapter 2, verse 11, Eliphaz the Temanite was actually one of Job's friends that come to visit. So it seems like there is some communication between those that were with Job at that time. The other two were a Shuhite and a Namathite, and so I'm not sure where those individuals hailed from, but I just think it's interesting you still see that lineage coming into other parts of the Bible. Anybody have anything they would like to add to?
I find it interesting that on the Holy Hama, it mentions the daughter of Anah, the daughter of Zibeon. Because usually it says daughter of a man's name,
Right.
but it's, I find that because that's, back in verse 2 or 3, it says the same thing.
Yeah,
The
that
daughter of Anah, the daughter of Zibeon the Hivite. And so normally it's, daughter of so-and-so, which is a man's name. It's not usually a woman's name.
I'm not sure.
Is that a woman's? But yeah, it says a daughter.
Just kick over this and see if I don't know if anybody has any notes that direction
The
on.
daughter of Anah, the daughter of Zibeon. Am I reading that wrong? Or?
No, I think I don't know if Anah. That's the part of the fun with the names is whether they are male or female. Sometimes hard to.
Yeah, it says daughter of.
Daughter.
That's what throws it in.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I don't know.
Don't know what is special about. Her. That it. What's he saying? Reporting it as the daughter of, so referring to mom.
Well,
Unless, just don't know, but it's trying to hold the lineage piece, most likely.
well, from
Because it
reading,
goes back to Zibeon.
if you take the names literally, verse 2, Ada is the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and Ahilabama, the daughter of Anah, the daughter of Zebulon. So it appears that he married the mother and the daughter from a different husband, if you take it from that perspective. Which I got so tied up trying to figure out how many wives he had, I didn't trace that one down because I'm trying to figure out that very lineage that you're talking about.
There's an Anah in verse 24 that sounds like is a man.
The children of both Asia and Anab.
said this was that Anna that found the mules in the wilderness, as he fed the donkeys of Zibeon, his father.
So I've got,
It's saying that it's referring to a he there, I don't know if that's the same one, though.
Right.
Yeah. Enon's a man.
okay.
That, in verse 2, it can't, right?
Okay, what's the, so. the verse
And
you
the
got.
daughter of Zibi.
Is that a lineage? She was the daughter of Anna, who was the son of
Oholibama,
Zibeon?
the daughter of Anna. Daughter of
Yeah, but then
Zibeon.
the part after that, the daughter of Anna,
Maybe
which is the
parallel.
daughter, and it says daughter of Zibeon.
Yeah, it can't be referring to, it may be referring to two things that point back to the apple of Rama.
Right. But you don't know the daughter of Zibeon, you don't know who that's describing.
Is it still, could it still be
I
describing
have
her?
I have a footnote next to in verse 2 where it says the daughter of Zibeon. It says in the Syriac text, it says son. So the Assyrian text says son.
Is it, could it be the case where it's not, or I'm trying to think how to say this, that
That daughter.
Anna-
granddaughter.
That's what,
Yeah.
that's what my, that's what, I noted on my iPad, it says the daughter of one and the granddaughter of the other.
so it's still keeping that male lineage?
Yeah, just,
But it's-
they're two generations.
Right. Which would make sense to your comment earlier that why is it referring back to a mother? That's unusual, but if it's it's keeping that generational daughters with that male lineage, that would make sense to that, to how we normally see it.
That makes sense.
So other than Timian, I don't know if we see a lot of these names coming through. I do think it's interesting that in the way that the text was broken up by Moffat, this section here from, or I can't talk. Esau's descendants are 9 through 14, but as we continue reading through here, we start seeing titles in the rest of the sections. So it appears as if, whereas Ishmael was, all his sons were given the title prince, we're gonna start seeing chiefs, dukes, and coming through. So apparently these individuals were individuals of power and of authority that come through his descendant line. Let's read through 15. Let's go 16 through 19, please.
You want to start
You ready?
16 or 15?
Start 15. I'm sorry, my head's not on.
These
15.
were dukes of the sons of Esau. The sons of Eliphaz, the firstborn son of Esau, Duke Teman, Duke Omar, Duke Zepho, Duke Kenaz, Duke Korah, Duke Gatam, and Duke Amalek. These are the dukes that came of Eliphaz in the land of Edom. These were the sons of Adon. And these are the sons of Reuel, Esau's son. Duke Mahab, Duke Zerah, Duke Shammah, Duke Mizah. These are the dukes that came of Reuel in the land of Edom. These are the sons of Bashemat, Esau's wife. And these are the sons of Oholibama, Esau's wife. Duke Jeush, Duke Jalem, Duke Korah. These are the dukes that came of Oholibama, the daughter of Anna, Esau's wife. These are the sons of Esau, who is Edom, and these are their dukes. Dukes and chiefs are the same thing.
The King James says chief.
Yeah, I think I didn't get into the names or the dukes versus chiefs first, but I mean, to me, I was reading it as somebody of authority, somebody in a position. It's almost cultural to what you call your, whether it's a king or prince or shah or Caesar, or the different titles. But to me, it's just somebody that is showing the fact that despite he wasn't the descendant, he wasn't the patriarch that was going to continue the line that was going to get us to Jesus, his children were still individuals of influence and of authority. This section here is kind of a repetitive statement of the information above. It does kind of take them from being children to individuals of authority by applying those titles. But just to, once again, it does appear, back to the conversation we were having before we read, that Anna was the daughter of Holabama, but from a different father, so kind of an interesting relationship there. So it's going to be a little longer read, if verses 20 through 30, please.
These are the sons of Seir, the Horite, who inhabited the land: Lotan, and Shobal, and Zibian, and Anah, and Dishon, and Ezer, and Dishan. These are the dukes of the Horites, the children of Seir from the land of Edom. And the children of Lotan were Hori and Hemam, and Lotan's sister was Timnah. And the children of Shobal were these: Alvin, and Manahath, and Ebal, Shephu, and Onan. And these were the children of Zibian, both Ajah and Anah. This was that Anah that found mules in the wilderness, as he fed the donkeys of Zibian his father. And the children of Anah were these: Dishon, and Beaholai, Bama, the daughter of Anah. And these were the children of Dishon: Himdan, and Ishaban, and Itharan, and Shiran. The children of Izhar are these: Bilhan, and Sahabana, Ben, and Achan. The children of Dishon are these: Uz and Aaron. These are the dukes that came of the Horites: Duke Lotan, Duke Shobal, Duke Zibian, Duke Anah, Duke Dishon, Duke Izhar, Duke Dishan. These are the dukes that came of Horite among their dukes in the land of Seir.
Thank you. That's very well done. So we kind of get a little bit of a switch from talking about Esau in this section to talking through the Horite chiefs, who would have been the individuals that were already there. Once again, the sons of Seir, so the mountain was named after this individual, but he's the one that had this lineage. Some names we do recognize: Uz. I don't know if it's named after the location, but I do know we hear about Uz later on. And we've also saw Amalekite earlier. It sounds like it's probably the lineage of the Amalekites coming up that we read about later on. I believe this is the group that Esau's tribe basically intermarries into and takes over that region. Maybe they talk about through this section. It's just names kind of bombarding us in this case. If not, how about we go 31 through 39?
These are the kings that reigned in the land of Edom, before there reigned any king over the children of Israel. And Bela the son of Beor reigned in Edom, and the name of his city was Dinhabah. And Bela died, and Jobab the son of Zerah of Bozrah reigned in his stead. And Jobab died, and Husham of the land of Timnah reigned in his stead. And Husham died, and Hadad the son of Bedad, who smote Midian in the field of Moab, reigned in his stead. And the name of his city was Avid. And Hadad died, and Samlah of Masrekah reigned in his stead. And Samlah died, and Saul of Rehoboth by the river reigned in his stead. And Saul died, and Baal-Hanan, the son of Akbar, reigned in his stead. And Baal-Hanan, the son of Akbar, died, and Hadar reigned in his stead, and the name of his city was Paved. And his wife's name was Mehetabel, the daughter of Matred, the daughter of Mizahab.
I think what we're looking for in this section is we've kind of gone from a tribe mentality. You got people to officially seeing the titles of kings and how I think we traditionally see it. You kind of see that genealogy as it goes down into some events that obviously they would have probably been very familiar with, the smiting of Midian in the field of Moab and some of those locations or some of those events. So anybody have anything they would like to add to this section? Let's go ahead and finish it out, 40 through 43.
These are the names of the dukes that came to Esau according to their families after their places by their names. Duke Timnah, Duke Alva, Duke Jephthah, Duke Holabama, Duke Elah, Duke Pinon, Duke Kenaz, Duke Timon, Duke Mibzar, Duke Magdiel, Duke Hiram. These be the dukes of Edom according to their habitations in the land of their possession. He is Esau, the father of the Edomites.
Thank you. So that gets us all the way through Esau's lineage of the individuals that are in Edom at this time. From this, what we're reading here, the tribe of Esau actually appears to have grown a little faster and probably got a little bit more powerful than Jacob did initially. Somebody sneak over right quick to Deuteronomy chapter 2, verses 1 through 4. Look at something that Moses had discussed with the Israelites. It's Deuteronomy 2, 1 through 4, and the names are not in this section, so hopefully it's a bit easier to read.
Then we turned our journey into the wilderness of the way of the Red Sea, and the Lord spake unto me, and we compassed Mount Seir 3 days. The Lord spake unto me, saying, Ye have compassed this mountain long enough, turn northward, and command ye the people, saying, Ye are to pass through the coast to your brethren, the children of Esau, which dwell in Seir, and they shall be afraid of you. Take ye no heed unto yourself.
Thank you. So the Israelites have done their wandering. The generation that had rebelled against Moses in the initial entering the promised land have passed away. So they're going back in, and this is a reminding to the individuals that the Edomites were a large, powerful group, but not to be afraid of them. The Edomites were going to fear Israel. It's also interesting here that we see the Mount Seir, and there is mention in this section also that it's something that they've apparently seen a number of times, and they've always turned away from it. So here they're finally going to turn north and go back into it. And we actually see in Numbers chapter 20, verses 14 through 21. And this is actually prior to them entering in, before the... Yes, please.
And Moses sent messengers from Kadesh unto the king of Edom. Thus saith thy brother Israel, Thou knowest all the travail that hath befallen us. Our fathers went down into Egypt, and we have dwelt in Egypt a long time. And the Egyptians vexed us and our fathers. And when we cried unto the Lord, he heard our voice and sent an angel, and brought us forth out of Egypt. And behold, we are in Kadesh, a city in the uttermost of thy border. Let us pass, I pray thee, through thy country. We will not pass through the fields or the vineyards, or through the vineyards, neither will we drink the water of thy wells. We will go by the king's highway. We will not turn to the right hand or the left. For until we had passed thy borders. And Edom said unto him, Thou shalt not pass by me, lest I come out against thee with the sword. And the children of Israel said unto him, We will go by the highway, and if I and my cattle drink of thy water, then I will pay for it. I will only, without doing anything else, go through on my feet. And he said, Thou shalt not go through. And Edom came out against them with much people, with a strong hand. Thus Edom refused to give Israel passage through his border, wherefore Israel turned away from him.
Thank you. So we see here that even though that the tribe has apparently gotten very large, they refuse Israel the opportunity to go through the land, which does come back to bite them later on, not showing that friendliness to them. And in the long run, they had to wind up turning around and going wandering the wilderness anyway. So a couple last little sections I kind of wanted to talk about here. If we go back and look at Genesis chapter 27, looking at 38 through 40, we go back and we look again at the blessing that Isaac had to give to Jacob, Isaac gave to Esau because of the deception, and Jacob had already taken the blessing that he intended for Esau. It's 27, if I get somebody to go 38 through 40, please.
Esau said unto his father, Hast thou one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, on my father. Esau lifted up his voice and wept. And Isaac his father answered and said unto him, Behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth, and of the dew of heaven below. By the sword shalt thou live, and shalt serve thy brother. And it shall come to pass, when thou shalt have the dominion, that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck.
So we know even though these encounters of Moses at the time he's writing this, Edom is still not under Jacob's control. They're not allowing that family lineage, that they're not allowing that friendliness to continue showing there. And so we do read that we know that the Israelites are going to eventually conquer and control the Edomites, and the Edomites it's always going to be a little bit of a contention there. We actually read in 2 Chronicles chapter 21, verses 5 through 10. In 2 Chronicles chapter 21, verses 5 through 10.
Jehoram was 32 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 8 years in Jerusalem. And he walked in the way of the kings of Israel, like as did the house of Ahab. For he had the daughter of Ahab to wife, and he wrought that which was evil in the eyes of the Lord. Howbeit the Lord would not destroy the house of David, because of the covenant that he had made with David, and as he promised to give a light to him and to his sons forever. In his days, the Edomites revolted from under the dominion of Judah and made themselves a king. Then Jehoram went forth with his princes and all his chariots with him, and he rose up by night and smote the Edomites which compassed him in, and the captains of the chariots. So the Edomites revolted from under the hand of Judah unto this day. The same time also did Libnah revolt from under his hand, because he had forsaken the Lord God of his fathers.
Thank you. So here we see that Isaac had made the promise that at some point they would revolt and they would break that yoke. And we do see that in 2 Chronicles chapter 21, where Edom finally breaks that yoke and looks like there was some repercussions from the decision, but they did break through it. The Edomites in the last few minutes here, we do see where they continue to be a problem. Joshua in 15 verse 1, Jephthah is the judge at the time. He emphasizes that Edom is continually a problem, but God gave them the land so they couldn't be given to the Ammonites, and some issues in there about how Edom, and they wanted some property. Jephthah would not let them take it back because God had given it to them. But Edom continues to be a problem for Jephthah. We do see even before Chronicles where Saul fights against the Edomites in 1 Samuel chapter 22. David finally does conquer them in 2 Samuel 8. And then we also read the parallel version of 2 Chronicles 20. In 2 Kings chapter 8, verses 20 through 22, where that revolt also happens, and we continue seeing where Edom rises up against Israel. So they weren't ever happy with it. There was always that little bit of contention between it. So it's almost as if the wrath that Saul had continues on his generations, that they never quite had the conquering that Esau thought he should be in the firstborn. So that gets us through 36. We'll be covering chapter 37 next week. And I think Chris will be back the week after for start chapter 38. It's about 2 minutes. Anybody have anything they'd like to add? Anything they'd like to cover? Any questions? I appreciate your time. Appreciate the comments. I definitely thank you for the read. That definitely difficult sections. Thank you very much.